Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Welcome back to our December 2021 installation of Community Conversations. Somatic Experiencing International is delighted and honored to spend some time with y'all as we talk about matters related to public health concerns that are involving, compelling, engaging, and maybe calling out for some new kinds of conversation around the kind of topics we're exploring. We'd like to bring to you the background of our really incredible somatic experiencing trauma resolution modality into the conversation of the public health concern matter today of chronic pain. It's a really important matter for our times. And so I'm thrilled that we get to be in this discussion with you. Now, notice I'm saying again and again, discussion, conversation. I just really want to put us on the map for what we're up for in today's dialogue, engagement, and conversation. The world has so many webinars, so many opportunities to be trained and developed and learn techniques and skills. At L.AC International, we can train and develop you in the skills of being an advanced practitioner of somatic experiencing, a method for using your neurobiology to resolve trauma of all kinds, shock trauma, developmental trauma, all kinds of trauma. But what we're here for today is something different. And so I just want to invite all the participants to be listening and noticing within your own body, within your own presence in the time we spend today for something different, an invitation for relatedness. Like I'm talking with you right now. I don't want to be talking at you. Like really, this is not a talking head to just teach you some stuff. Particularly if you're someone who's experienced chronic pain or working with people with chronic pain, the sensitivity to our relatedness with people can be a really profound and important social engagement healing salve. So I just want to let us have that while we're together. You know, in the time together, who knows, we'll say brilliant things, we'll say not brilliant things, we'll say whatever. And it's just about actually being human in each other's presence. So as you're here, we invite you to be with us in this conversation. You'll be seeing our guests on the screen and they'll be chatting to each other, but we want to be also chatting with you. So throughout the program, there will be a question and answer format that you can participate in. At times, we'll ask you to raise your Zoom hand. And those of you who may be watching on Facebook, quick, grab the registration link and jump into Zoom so you can actually get into some of that part of the conversation with us. You won't be able to from Facebook Live, but you can if you've registered and you're in the Zoom platform. And so I will go over some of those details with you about how to get involved and engaged in case we do some exercises or maybe bring you on screen to ask some questions and chat with the conversationalists. So let's go over a little bit of how to do that. Nice. And I love seeing everyone arriving. This is always my favorite part. Those of you who've been with us before know I sometimes get teary. There's no joke to that. I really get like moved just knowing we're spending some time together. It's so awesome. So if you can right now, whether you're on a computer, an iPad, a tablet, a phone, look on your screen for the Q&A button. There's Q&A and it's got two little chat boxes next to it. We'll be using the Q&A section of this time together. And if Caroline, our public health coordinator, can jump in there and drop in a question for us, you'll see that when a question pops up in there, if you have a question, anytime throughout our time together, you can write it in there. And if you don't have questions, but you want to see what other people wonder about, look over there, look in that Q&A, see what people are asking about. And there will be a little thumb where you can vote a thing up or down if you're interested. So now that I'm not actually seeing anything in there, I'm a little nervous. So if there's any participant who's on the line right now, yeah, okay, there's Caroline. She just put hello. Can everyone hear well? So cool. You're seeing all the thumbs go up. People are writing into it. And Dion answered it live. So, okay, so that's a little bit how that will look. You'll see the questions in there. And when people thumbs up it, You'll be like, oh, I thought I saw that one question. And then others will go up, up, up. And you'll be like, wait, they're disappearing. That's kind of how that goes. So just keeping your orientation to the ones that are at the top. In fact, right off the bat, someone's asking if the recording will be shared. It will be shared. It will be shared. All of our community conversations are shared at traumahealing.org/conversations. Takes a little bit to get them up there sometimes, but when they're there, you can go see the whole legacy of our public health content that we've been creating for you as a resource. So super cool. So that's how you use the Q&A. You've already got it. And some of you may have already been thinking about today's session, and you already have questions about chronic health and how different therapeutic practices may support that. Maybe you've seen the bios of our participants already and you have some questions. Put them in now before they even start talking. Let people start upvoting. Let's get related and connected. Maybe even to get related and connected, let's do the thing you know I love to do. How about for a moment you write in there where you're chiming in from, whatever you'd like to share a little bit with the group. I'd love to know who's with us. We've had over 300 registrants for today's session today, so I'm really excited to consider where y'all might be. So go ahead and write in there where you're at while you're here today. Oh my gosh, first one is hello from France. Oh my gosh, all the way over the pond. Nice to see you, Dorte. And then Raleigh, North Carolina, right down here, sort of Southern Bayou, Wales, UK, Alberta, Canada, every time. Oh my gosh. Guys, look at those places coming up on that. Portland, Bloomfield, New Jersey, Toronto. Get present to this moment. The world is in this conversation with us. Like if you feel like you are responsible for this, you are a therapeutic provider working with chronic pain clients or patients, or if you are someone who experiences it, you may feel a sense of isolation or aloneness. Look at that list. You are not alone. All these people care. It's December. It's a hard time to get together and everybody there cares. Colorado, Janine's got an exclamation point. She's like, I am here. Hi, Katie. Thanks for being here. Katie in Phoenix and Nicola in Seattle and Ireland. Man, oh my gosh, Wales. I can't wait to come visit you all someday. Romania, yes, so amazing. The world needs this resource together. We need to spend this time. I'm so grateful to be with you all. So cool, you're getting there. Keep getting related over there. At some point, all those locations will go away and just what questions you chime in will be there. Also, when you ask a question, if you already know, hey, I want to come on screen and I want to ask this question. I heard Beth or John or Sam or Dr. Bixby say something and I want to get online. Like put in your question, like, I'd like to answer this online. That will also queue us up. So sometimes it helps us navigate our technical arrangements a little differently and easily. So thank you for being a part of that. I'm going to tell you today, you guys, I'm coming to you from New Orleans. I'm in a different location than usual. We're about to launch SE International's first kind of experiment providing some mental health disaster relief support in the Louisiana bayou that was affected by Hurricane Ida in September. So hold us in your thoughts, minds, prayers, whatever it is you do over the next couple of days, because we're launching something inaugural here. So I'm in a different place, but with you, we're in this place together. So cool. Okay, one other thing I want to show you is at some points we'll be asking you to raise your little blue hand or your little yellow hand, whatever hand color you got, down at the bottom of your screen. You can see raise hand. On raise hand, I'm going to figure out a little bit more about who's with us and what your background, so we can make sure we really support you with what we talk about today. So if you see that raise hand button and you are currently trained in somatic experiencing and you have finished the program and you're a somatic experiencing practitioner, go ahead and raise your little hand. See it? All right, 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 6. Someone's putting up and down. Okay, the numbers are going up for the hands. Okay, so we've got a fraction of you who are SE practitioners. Now this starts to get really cool. We've been finding like 30% of people who come to these sessions are already trained. 30% are students. Okay, go ahead and lower. I'm going to lower all your hands. Boom. And then raise your hand if you are currently an SE student, like if you're in our 3-year professional training to get trained in somatic experiencing. Cool. Tons of students. Isn't this fun? Guys, I'm a student too. I'm going into my advanced year. It's really fun to keep learning about our whole world from all these cool SCPs who are sharing the nature of them. Okay, bunch of you are students. Yeah, all right. We've got almost double the number of students than we do SEPs. So, all right, we've got an educational context. Now, if you are calling in because you are not like SE trained, you maybe don't even know what SE is, or you go to an SE therapist and you're learning about this, you have some chronic pain, something about the topic just called you into this. If any of that matches you, go ahead and raise your little hand. Oh my gosh, that's going up really fast. You guys, you're gonna love today's conversation. That helps us know, so like we don't get too jargony about the stuff we're all super into. We all study the nervous system and how to, do some regulation and resetting, and we can get like, a little bit wrapped around the axle with the terms we love. Don't let us lose you. If we say a term that you don't know, or you hear something, you're like, what the heck is that? Put that in the question. Oh my gosh, cool. Okay, so more people are not familiar with, or are current students of clients. Oh, wow. Humans are leading this program. Clients of current somatic experiencing practitioners. I'm lowering all your hands. We've got a good gang today. Let's get started, you guys. This is the best part. I'm going to invite our guests who will be speaking with you and us and me today. Oh, by the way, I'm going to pop on every once in a while with some questions. So it's weird when I pop on, all those squares move around. I apologize in advance. That's a little disorienting. We figure it out together. But now I'm going to have the screens pop on. If you are one of our panelists, Dr. Bixby, Sam, John, Beth, go ahead and come on screen with us. Come off mute. Let's start to get related, connected, gathered. Love seeing you all. Perfect. Hi, guys. Everyone's here. Folks, you're going to be in such a treat with these folks. We had an incredible conversation just gearing up for this. And I know they've got exercises planned, all kinds of cool things. But so you can all start to get to know who you're going to spend some time with today. Yes, if you could please, we always like to start with a question. And if in the question, you could also help us know a little bit more about your practice, where you're at, what you kind of care about in relation to this work, and we can start to get to know you by getting related rather than reading your bios. My question for you for today is, how did you guys particularly find chronic pain related to the nature of the kind of work you do? Like, what is it that had you come into working with chronic pain? And over the time we'll spend together, we'll talk more about what's possible in that field and all those kind of things. But Beth, would you want to get us started? I'll jump on the screen and come back on. We have questions and things.
Yeah, for sure. First, I just want to say welcome to everybody that is joining us today. I'm so excited, and thank you, John, Dr. Rachel, and Sam for being here with me so we can have some great conversation around this really difficult topic called chronic pain. I am a licensed massage therapist, and I reside in Kentucky, Northern Kentucky, just a little bit south of Cincinnati, Ohio. And I have been doing massage therapy for almost 30 years. So not new to the field. I have been in the somatic experience discipline for about 4 years now. And what brought me to chronic pain and to know more about it and to be curious about it is the clients that walk through my door that I'm helping. I do primarily therapeutic medical type of massage. I also have my BS degree in psychology, so I kind of combine some of the mental and emotional stuff with the physical stuff, though my scope of practice centers primarily on the physical side of things. So I see a lot of people that want to come in and just feel better. So lots of different reasons for that. Some are autoimmune related, some are injury related, some are people that are just feeling pain from the accumulation of the years that they've been on this planet and been in their bodies and stuff. There's lots of different reasons why chronic pain shows up. And I'm just trying to hold space for that person that every person that walks through my door, that they come in not just as a physical body, but a spiritual, a mental, emotional, as well as a physical body, and just to really hold space for that entire person as they come through that door. And I'm just so excited to be here talking with you guys and getting this opportunity to share what I do in my practice and how it affects me and how I show up. So thanks for having me.
you, Beth. I'm really happy to be here as well. It's a wonderful topic. And so when I was doing the somatic experience training, I was, which I completed, I think at this point, 5 or 6 years ago. And I was not a therapist. I was not a body worker. I was a kind of outlier in a sense. I came to it really through my work teaching mindfulness based stress reduction, which is a meditation based modality, I suppose, that was developed actually by Jon Kabat-Zinn. Many of you probably know about that, many years ago, 40 years ago, specifically to work with people with chronic pain. And what happened was that many of the folks who trained me, and actually the center itself said, well, not to be used with people who are dealing with PTSD particularly. And I thought that's strange because it seems to me like it would be the perfect thing to bring into trauma therapy for sure. So that's why I went into the SE work, because I wanted to be able to work with people through this curriculum and individually who were specifically dealing with trauma. At the same time, people are coming into one of my classes or calling me to work individually who are certainly dealing with chronic pain, because there's a lot to be worked with through mindfulness and through compassion training. So I also did additional training in England with a woman named Vidyamala Birch, which brought me to occasionally teaching classes based on the title of her book, at least in this country, which is You Are Not Your Pain. And what's so interesting is the relationship, of course, between trauma and pain, because certainly pain itself, chronic or otherwise, can be very traumatic. And anybody who's dealing with other kinds of trauma, it can result in pain as well. And so the work that I do really allows people to change their relationship completely to whatever they are experiencing, whether it's physical pain or emotional pain, it doesn't really matter. But physical pain, certainly when we start to turn our attention to the whole body, when we start to do self-touch and we start to bring our own compassionate heart to whatever we are doing, to the sensations we're experiencing, then transition and transformation starts to happen. So I forgot to say where I am geographically, and I think since Beth did, it's only fair that I do. I work and live in Manhattan, in New York, and you may occasionally hear sirens going by because that's the nature of the neighborhood. And but I'm very happy to be here and look forward to this discussion. So I think on to you, Sam.
Hi, John. Hi, Beth, Rachel, and hi, everybody in Zoom land. I'm really happy to be here and excited to see what unfolds. And I'm in the mountains of Western North Carolina at home. I live here on a small farm with my kids and my wife. And I have a humble practice that's about 80 or 90% on Zoom or telehealth. And it's quiet and it suits me. And so this is kind of a big, exciting time for me to be out and about like this. I was an acupuncturist for a long time before I became an SEP. And I was never really a primary care acupuncturist, but still I was practicing a physical medicine on the energetic side of physical, but physical compared to what I do now. And I worked with a lot of chronic pain. And I kind of learned over time that the way that I could be of the best use to my clients was by working on the relational level. And so whether it was and expanding my definition of chronic pain to include suffering or just the hard parts, the parts that we have a hard time relating to, the parts that we want to disown or deny or get away from or solve or dismiss, and how to restore relationship and compassion there, and in doing so restore movement, got more and more interesting to me. And that's what happened. Then I got into SE, and then now I only do SE because That's how I can help the most, on the relational level and on the spiritual level, also like in the level of meaning and the overall context of meaning for who we are and the role suffering has in our lives. I think I'll stop there.
I am Rachel Bixby. I am a yoga teacher who also has 30 years experience as a physical therapist. Chronic pain has been there the whole time because I work with physical disability at, there have always been outliers, people that don't respond to the typical treatment, typical medical care. And over that amount of time, I have realized that working with someone with a neurological problem and working with someone that has an orthopedic problem is kind of an arbitrary distinction, particularly with that population that is not as responsive. And more recently, I have learned, or come to believe, I should say, from my perspective, that the X factor there is many of those people have complex or developmental trauma, which just put simply is that they don't feel safe in the world because of things that have happened, ongoing things that have happened in the past and possibly in their childhood. So that is really coming to the forefront with the ACEs studies. I think a lot of people are familiar with that anymore. And this can lead to what's called insecure attachment. And I have asked that there be a link. There's an article if you want to read about that connection. It's a literature review about that connection. And it makes a lot of sense if you think about it. And I have promised not to go into nerd mode. So I will be very succinct about what I had to say there. They have done some pain studies that show that fear plays a big factor, and people that short-term pain turns into persistent pain, you know, that it doesn't go away. And actually there are changes in the brain. The sensory map literally rearranges. So if you are also into more details, there's a couple links for that too. So the first one is called Tame the Beast, and it's just a quick and dirty patient education YouTube video. It's kind of funny, you know, the way they do it with the animation and stuff. And that was put together by an Australian professor, Latimer Mosley. He's a clinical researcher and also a physiotherapist, so that is kind of refreshing for me. And if you want more than that, there a friend of mine from SE study group from the Madison cohort, Madison, Wisconsin, did a presentation, a 1-hour presentation for the state's public health, and it's really, really good, you know. So if you want to check that out, there's a link for that too. And I was thinking about the mindfulness studies. That's kind of a connection to Madison. So it's basically a problem of perception. And I just have a funny little trick I want to show you. I actually stole it from Christy, who did the presentation. And so this is called the corn sweet illusion. So it's similar to what happens in your brain. So if this were your sensory cortex, and the darker is the pain, and the lighter is other sensations, neutral or pleasant. And here we have fear. It's probably written there backwards, but so if we come across, let me see if I can get this right, everything kind of turns dark. So the pain overtakes everything. So I thought that was pretty darn slick, because it kind of says it all. The picture says it all. So there's different ideas on how to manage that, but filling in this part with sensations, you know, interoception and proprioception and touch and sound and vibration, take back take back the space. So I guess that's basically what I have to say to start. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm just to riff off of some of the things you said, Rachel. I mean, there's so much there and there's so many threads and they're all really juicy. I mean, that the role of negativity bias, I mean, just learning what that means and how to have skills around working on positivity bias, or at least lessening the negativity bias, so that we have more control over which sensations are prioritized in our perception. And so our experience is more populated by what we want it to be populated by, rather than maybe what's been modeled for us in our childhoods or in the dominant culture. Another thing, when I think of fear, I think of tension, I think of bracing. Peter Levine used to say, here's the trauma. He'd clench his fist, and then he'd open it and he'd say, where's the trauma? And we've probably all had that experience of, like, we think we have to corral the pain and control it somewhere and keep it somewhere. And we're not using all of our real estate, and we're totally focused on this point of highest charge. And if we relax and let it spread and move, all of a sudden, so much ease can come in.
Yeah, and thank you, Sam. The other aspect about that, so, you know, the way, of course, the way to counteract fear is actually through love, among other things. But, you know, so that's where the compassion aspect comes in as well. But there's one other thing which is so related to what all of you have said, right, is that there is the sensation of pain. And then there's, you know, everything that we add on to this, right? So the sensation of pain may then lead to fear, and then it may lead to the thought of, oh no, and then it will lead to another thought of, it's always going to be this way, and other thoughts and other thoughts. And there's a demonstration I could do, but it wouldn't really be very effective on Zoom, which just has to do with, and we do it at the beginning of the pain classes I teach, which is, you know, we put a pillow on someone. That's their initial sensation of pain. And then I just ask them to say, then what? And, you know, and then we add up the pillows until there are like 10 pillows on top. And some people are really comfortable with that because they're so identified with everything else that's there. And I'm sure we've all had that experience. It's like, what would they be without that? And yet they can't walk across the room carrying all those pillows. So it's, you know, then you just kind of, and you realize that between every one of those is a gap, and that's where things can change. And when you were talking about the neurological side of this, of course, that the connections get changed as well. So that while the connections go one way, and I think that was your implication, they also go the other way. But it does take some time and some training and some realization. And that's the beauty of the work we're doing, right? All aspects of it, including, I mean, it's all somatic at that point. And it's like, oh. And then the realization that, of course, there's the whole body, which is just what you're referring to. So yeah, it's a really, there's so much here, and so much freedom that can be achieved once somebody realizes it.
Jon, you mentioned something in your bio when you were talking at first about, I think it was a book you referred to that's called You Are Not Your Pain. And I just think that really is at the basis
Great
of
title.
what we're here
Yeah.
talking about, right? Is I think we are biologically kind of wired to focus in and narrow in on the negative piece, the pain, what's getting our brain's attention at the forefront, that it's so easy to go there and to keep going there and to keep going there. And then we miss the subtleties of where the ease can be felt at, as Sam mentioned and stuff and everything. And, you know, there's so much wrapped into those layers and stuff for people as we sit with them, and we're trying to not just educate them and help them relieve some of their pain, but just to have a little bit of space and holding space for them, that they are somebody other than their pain or their diagnoses or any of those things. And that can be so powerful to just remember that in the crux of what pain does and how debilitating it can be to us physically, mentally, emotionally, all of those things. There are spaces and places where we can have some ease of that happens.
Yeah, and one of the many relational pieces to it, or attachment pieces, I think, is that it can be so isolating. And I mean, it's a trauma symptom itself to think that we have to do it alone.
Yeah.
And we can't really do anything all that well alone. And I mean, just every one of us here knows what pain is like and doesn't like it. And it's hard. And like, there's so much compassion there, but it's hard to access. And like, we confuse it with weakness, or, you know, or we confuse responsibility with regret or shame or blame. Like, not the ability to respond and be in relationship with, but like, oh, it's my fault. I should be, you know, better with my positive visualizations. If I were a better yogi, I wouldn't be in pain. I mean, there's that whole. So that isolation, I think, is so hard. And the fact is, like, suffering connects all of us and gives life a lot of meaning and immediacy. You know, we've all got so much skin in the game.
We'll say that's one of the real benefits of group work as well. You know, whether, I mean, it's FE work is not normally group work, but it's certainly a lot of the work I do is group work. And I was really astonished the first time I offered a class just specifically for people with pain, chronic pain. And they were all from different reasons. You know, some of it was illness, some of it was accidents, et cetera. Didn't matter. You know, just the relational aspect that you're talking about, Sam, was so supportive. And the compassion they had with each other, plus the compassion, you know, we are helping them find for themselves and embodying ourselves, presumably, you know, that makes all the difference in the world to hold that space. Yeah.
My profession, that is really, really minimized. Almost all the goals you write are independence and blank, you know, independent. And so it's a real eye opener to come to, you know, I really like to do interdisciplinary things. I'm always going to different types of programs and different professions. I like to bring it together, and it makes me kind of sad, you know, that's, you know, how you're trained. And also when I'm working with people, I guess it's just cultural in large part anyway. And I live in the Midwest. I think we're especially that way, you know, kind of the Corn Belt and the Rust Belt, and, you know, very much stiff upper lip and, you know, push on through. And I've really had to work with language, you know, to get people on board, you know, so that they don't feel weak, or, you know, I'm not making them too vulnerable, or so it's a work in progress to bring that stuff together.
Curious.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I work with often, because I'm not licensed to do any touch work in New York, nor do I really care to, and especially these days, and it's hard. I can touch you online in one way or another, but, you know, just because one of the things that comes up for people is, and we've all kind of inferred it, but is just this resistance to what's here, right? As opposed to, well, here it is. It sucks, but here it is, you know. And I don't know if you all are familiar with the wonderful equation that pain times resistance equals suffering, right? So the more and it sort of was in that fist there, right? The more we resist it, the more we suffer. Whereas pain times acceptance equals freedom from that suffering. And so that first step of, oh, this really sucks. This really hurts. And it's, you know, I care about it, as opposed to, I don't want it. The I don't want it is such an unhelpful attitude, but it's understandable. It's understandable.
It's such a sticky little place because, we're talking about trying to encourage connections to positive sensation, different things than pain, not blanketing the pain, but then you have to accept also, and that's such an interesting zone. And I kind of had in mind to ask you about, you mentioned suffering. So there's craving and aversion. So how do you suss out between orienting to pleasure and craving pleasure?
Deep spiritual question for somebody who's also a Buddhist practitioner, right? And I'm sure we all have our own response to that. So, I mean, just being with pleasure as opposed to, so one is needing it all the time. That's the craving, right? I can't live without it.
Yeah.
Enjoying it is another matter.
Yeah.
And so, and what's so interesting, and I'll be curious to hear what you all say about this, but is that shift between pain that's on a scale of 10 and suddenly it's at about a 6, there's a difference. And just that shift, would be like going from really, really, really unpleasant to actually somewhat, at least not, if it's not pleasant, at least it's not horrible. And just recognizing, oh, what a relief that is, and pointing that out to people is really important. And so, and yet, if you're striving so hard to get to the other side, to the 0, you're going to be suffering as a result of the striving. And so it's like, okay, let's just, one moment at a time, just take that, and what's that difference like, and recognize it. Just helping people recognize that shift is so key.
For sure.
All the places I saw this morning in the New York Times, they were recommending savoring, and that's what I hear you say.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's a great word. Yeah, wonderful. I missed that article.
And I think often, sometimes, at least what I've seen with people coming in, is that they're so focused, hyper-focused on wanting to be at that 0, no pain, that it's really hard. It can be a struggle to get them to discuss or converse about what the journey is like, and where we can find some of the shifts in the nervous system, some of the shifts in their physiology, from point A to point D, on the journey and stuff. And I am also, just really cognizant and aware that, pain does suck. It's not a great thing. And there's information there that's really essential for all levels of our being to really acknowledge, and that we hold for that and stuff. And there's lessons that can be there and be very valuable. Yeah.
Oh, look who showed. Look whose face suddenly appeared.
Shock of a new screen. This is amazing. Like we're really, really present to how much your work intersects really powerfully. And just really love right now thinking about how you're across so many different disciplines working with this material. There's some really good questions popping up in the chat, and I'd love to let some people come in and ask them with you. You're nodding your head, so you're game. So Tara M said she'd be game. So we're going to bring Tara over next.
Yeah, so my question was, I feel like I reached something. I mean, I'm not a licensed somatic practitioner, but I practice things that are very similar. How do you handle people that you feel like, or that you come to realize aren't really ready to let go of that identity of having chronic pain or chronic illness?
I start because I was actually going to go here anyway after what Beth just said, and actually was riffing on what you said, Rachel, about like sometimes before the letting go, we have to go deeper into the anger, the rage, the the like, why me? This isn't fair. This wasn't my plan. This isn't what they promised me. Like all the stuff that usually gets put in the shadow because, you know, it's not seen as spiritual enough or pretty or, you know, but getting to kind of go into those raw places and have a fully embodied experience of just how hard it is and just how much we wish it would be otherwise. You know, it's kind of like the medicine is in the wound. Like if you go right into it like that, then you can get to the other side and maybe something new can happen and some new alternatives or options can present themselves because there can be some freedom, especially if the things that have been held in check, like, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be bitter. I'm not going to feel sorry for myself. So that's the first answer that comes up for me. Like going with what's there. Whatever's there can always be worked with.
So basically just taking kind of a longer process, because I feel like sometimes I get people there very quickly and that causes, yeah, a ton of anger. It's very projected, as well as like the identity crisis that comes with after that, which I've gone through myself, of course, you know, and I feel like there's a lot of unworthiness behind that they, you know, that identity is providing them so much, even though they say they don't want it anymore, if that makes sense. So yeah, so you just think taking it slower with clients.
Always taking it slower, taking it at the speed that they can integrate.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear what Rachel has to say, but certainly.
I was just going to say, I think that the training is really helpful. You know, there's similar things to somatic experiencing, but I think somatic experiencing particularly, it's the tiger, you know, waking the tiger. So getting okay with those kind of primitive animal part, you know, that's still there, even though we want to be spiritual, you know, you are, but you also have a body and you also live on this planet, and you also have to reconcile with that, you know. So I think the training, you know, I would recommend it if you're thinking about it. And also from what Sam said, I just want to show this picture because I happened to, you know, there was a little blog that said the Mohawk of awareness, you know, which if you're familiar with this Bessel van der Kolk thing. And so they're riffing on, you know, Mohawks and punk rock. And I'm like, how outlandish, that sounds ridiculous. So I read it and he's just describing how mosh pits, you get to like, it's embodied and they're angry and, you know, by the time I got to the end, I was like, well, I guess, you know, I kind of see what they're saying, but I think that's a good answer that Sam gave about, you know, those darker things, and SE really helps you be okay with them and understand them and normalize it.
And they need our love, and only we can set them free. I mean,
right.
It's like those they're ours. Like we're the ones that they've been waiting for.
And you know, you just said it, but you know that it's the fear of letting go of that identity as opposed to the identity itself, right? So it's like, who will I be without this pain or without this whatever? And it's the love that can kind of open that door for them. And also, it could also be useful, you know, having them recognize other things that they identify as, right? And you know, and we didn't talk about this yet, but at least directly, but the notion that, okay, so the pain isn't a part of the body, but what about the parts of the body that aren't in pain? Can they identify with that? You know, so just kind of, and the external world, you know, how do they identify with the external world, which is something we also haven't talked about too much, but it's so interesting that because one of the things that's brought into this training, this working with pain in a mindfulness capacity is just kind of habit breaking, right? So our habit is to like always come into the pain. This, what, you know, just go look out the window for 5 minutes. You know, what happens to your identity when you're looking out the window? Are you okay with that? And so there, that gradual way that Sam's talking about, it's just like, oh, just look out the window, or just, you know, go out and sit in front of a tree or whatever. I mean, so sort of that they change what they are identifying with and as. So giving them options, that's really the most important thing, is just options.
I'm also, Tara, just appreciating too the fact that there are a lot of people that I sit with that they have been in pain without a diagnosis or an understanding of where that pain is coming from for years. I mean, for a really long time. And so sometimes not being ready to let go of the identity is more about like they're just still trying to wrap their head around what does this diagnosis mean, and can I still hope that the pain is going to do something different, is that it can shift in some way and stuff. So I think it's important to also, like Jon mentioned, like, you know, find areas that have less pain and more ease and stuff, and to, you know, acknowledge and really have those conversations with clients about what it was like when the pain was there and there wasn't really a label for it or an understanding of it, and those kind of things, because there's so much layered emotion in that. And, you know, so sometimes you might need to, like myself, that falls a little bit outside of my scope of practice. So that's where a network comes into really being important. And, you know, I team up with, you know, psychologists and counselors and stuff in my area so they can talk more on the cognitive side. And I can really get curious and focus into, you know, what is it like for your tissues to now have this identity or this diagnosis, or, you know, what does that feel like? And what is that sensory experience and stuff? Because sometimes they don't think about that, you know, they're just so wrapped up in the pain itself that they're not really sometimes aware of what the diagnosis has given them, an identity of sorts, but also some answers that might take them down a different path than they thought was possible too. So there's just a lot of layers there and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Everything that you all are saying are things that I've definitely played with and whatnot. I guess I was more curious, I guess. Well, now it's, I feel like I'm projecting back on myself of, I guess, yeah, the reality that kind of sets in when people do that work, and some just not being ready to do that work, I guess, is more like handling that.
Right.
Are you talking about, are you talking about like clients that you're trying to help and there feels like there's resistance and you're not sure how to help them because they're not wanting to change, but they somehow want their symptoms to go away?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And just letting that kind of be, and just listening and letting it be. But yeah, being in that space, practicing that, I feel like is maybe just my own practice.
With time. Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah.
Kind of a boundary issue, right?
Yes.
So,
yes.
I mean,
Totally.
you just learn it.
Not kind of.
Learn it, hopefully, or else.
Well, sometimes it's almost like, Tara, they can't hope that they can let it go because it's been so long that they've been with it. It's like they don't know how to unattach themselves from it. Maybe it's less of a, I always get curious, is this a won't or a can't kind of thing, you know?
Yes.
Totally. I think sometimes like narrative building, like helping to bring in another, because then the ego is going to be terrified of like, I don't even know who I am without this pain or this identity. But if we can help play with other narratives, you know, that put the pain in a context of meaning, and just try them on. I mean, ultimately they're all counterfeit. Like none of us are who we think we are. And so it could be like this pain you're feeling is of enormous benefit to the world or your ancestral line or your unborn children, or I mean, there's so many stories, and some of them have a place to land and then can like create another opening.
Right.
I mean, it's like, I think a lot of us would be willing to feel a lot of pain if we knew it was doing a lot of good. It's the meaninglessness that's, I think, so hard, or if it feels arbitrary and just like, what? Why?
Yeah.
You know, it's so hard to live with that.
Giving it a name, making it a character sometimes, can make it a little bit fun too.
One other thing that's interesting is because a couple of us have referred to the pain as an it. It's like a thing. And then when you say, well, wait a minute, what are you calling pain? What is this pain? Like how much is it solid? Is it moving? Is it fluid? Is it whatever it is, and you divide it into this one teacher I know who talks about dividing and conquering. And so that what are they really identified with? And going back to the beginning of the question, and I think also something Sam said, what they're identified with is the fear. But if they actually look at that which they are calling pain, and you ask them to say, well, what is this really? What is really going on here? And just kind of saying, oh, actually it's this, and sometimes it's more this, and sometimes it's more this, And so it's like there's so many ways to kind of give them options and what you just discussed, Sam, is like really an interesting one, which I hadn't thought about. Just like, oh, so yeah, there's ways to go with this. It's fascinating.
Let me just jump in here a little bit. Like, Tara, this is such a rich dialogue, right? Like, just thank you for jumping into it with us, like really, because this is it's magnificent. And I'm tracking what you said and what our folks here are sharing is like, as soon as we start studying somatic experiencing, there's something that starts to open up around these really scary topics. It's like, in our trainings, and we're not trying to sell these trainings right now. This is not a marketing program. So just let me make it clear. I sound like a marketer because I freaking love somatic experiencing, but you do start to approach those things like in little small bites on the edges, and practice with each other. And chronic pain is a scary thing to approach that height of the pain, right? So you just get a little bit of practice. So I guess what I want to name right now for everyone who's here, who is not currently an SE student, is I just really want you to be equipped for the work you're doing. So if you take down this email right now, and Carolyn will put it in the thing, publichealth@traumahealing.org, email us that you want access to basics. And what I'm going to do, for those of you who've attended live, if you're not attending live, I'm not going to do this, but sorry for YouTube, glad everyone's here. But if you're attending live, we're going to give you, there's a 3-hour like kind of introduction that we normally do before the 3-hour training that's led by other SEPs like these folks here. I want you to be able to take it and start getting some resources right now. So we'll give that to you for free, just so that you have one more tool in your repertoire and a little bit more experience with kind of the things we're talking about. Because guys, I heard you say, so it looked like Tara jumped off. Thanks, Tara. We've maybe kept you a little longer than you meant to be. But you guys, you're starting to do something which I love happens in these spaces. You all have this shared modality and you start riffing with each other. And it's just really, really mind-boggling and beautiful. But I'm also hearing you talk about the experience of it. We all know that somatic experiencing, you start to experience bodily the things y'all are describing. And I'm wondering if you guys have any exercises you might like to lead some folks in today, because there's cool questions popping up in the chat, but one put up anonymously. Do you have any exercises? I just thought, what if we take a few minutes and have you lead us through a couple of different little things so we might understand something about approaching pain in an exercise capacity. These are not like silver bullets. I'm not asking, we're not going to solve it like this, but start to get some access to how you might look at it. Raise your hand if you want. Who wants to lead an exercise?
Okay, so when we're doing this, it's, I think, important to be as kind of open and curious and kind of playful. And if you do this with your clients, within the bounds of appropriateness of, what you're doing, but try to just open it up and be just fun and playful. And also while you're doing the exercises, if you get like a sigh or a yawn or your stomach starts to grumble, those are all signs that your vagus nerve is coming online and starting to reorganize your safety network. And those are good things. So it's kind of nice to take a note and savor. We'll use that previous word. So when we do this, try to see where in your body that you feel it. And it might be different from one person to the other, or different than what you've heard someone's told you. Make it your own. So we're going to do some toning. So you didn't know you were signing up for. I see we're muted, but if you want to share your voice, feel free. And then the four of us have committed to do this together. So, so we're going to do ooh first. So take a nice breath in, and on the out breath, you're going to ooh. Ooh. Take a minute to notice where you felt that, if you felt that, if it felt calming, if it felt stimulating, you liked it, you didn't like it. And there, I just got a sigh. So all right. And then we're going to do the same thing, only this time it's a ah. Okay, so inhale. So probably you felt it a little different place. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. Yeah, I feel it in my chest too. That's usually pretty comforting for most people. If you're feeling very defensive in your heart region, it's not that comforting. So, you know, you just really want to be open to different people's experiences. And then we're going to play with doing the ooh and the ah alternating, kind of like a siren, just to feel like it moving from the one area to the other area. So inhale. Ooh, ah, ooh, check your breath. Sometimes it opens it up a little. If it shuts down, just take note. That was interesting. And then we're going to do the sound. So these are all kind of organic sounds that we just don't naturally make with the emotional things. You know, or ah, you know, natural. So again, inhale. That's usually right here. So my ears pop when I do that. And then if you're a yogi or a yogini, you might know where we're heading with this. These are the component sounds of the om. So the ah, ooh, So when you do that, the vibration kind of cascades up your body. And it's more receptive. It's more, that vibratory sense is more like an inflow rather than the om is more of an expression. So if you feel a little bit kind of too stimulated, you could just sit it out. If you want to try it, come along. So it's all personal based on your own reaction. Okay, so nice in breath. You might find you like one of those better than the other. So, you know, maybe you're going to hang out with like the ah part because that's what you need today. Or maybe you better make sure you leave enough time before you're out of breath for that, you know. So we'll just do one more, and then you just kind of make it your own concoction of those three sounds, whichever one you want to emphasize. See what you like. Ah. That's it. Anybody have something they want to share?
Hi, I wanted to ask, are goosebumps like something that happens, like it happens to me all the time. Like I'm constantly feeling goosebumps. So is that something with the vagus nerve too? Like a big
You know,
one?
if my memory serves, that is actually sympathetic. So vagus is parasympathetic, goosebumps are sympathetic, and you know, this is off of my memory, but yes. So that's a little more stimulating,
Thank
right?
you.
Because it's pulling the hair up. Like if you were an animal, you'd be hackles up.
Yeah, it's great, you know, how essential that VU is just because of that relationship right there in that. I would say that this is like where the cables run from the body to the neck top computer. Like it's like you're really stimulating right there in the area of all the cables, you know. So great, thanks. And it's relative to so many of our public health topics. And I think Caroline's even going to post a video of Dr. Levine leading us on that. Guys, I want to thank you for jumping on screen with us. We're just going to keep moving and keep sharing more things and getting related and trying more resources. So thank you for being here. I just want to name what's kind of interesting right now is that in the chat, you know, some people are listening to us and having different responses to what they're hearing, you know, and it is a risky thing to jump out and talk about chronic pain, right? I mean, I think we spoke about that as a group before we had this session, because it's like, man, people, it's what you were saying, Beth. It's like, well, if it's been someone's identity for much of their life, you're not just talking about, well, I've got an elbow that hurts. It's like my being and my identity has evolved around this way that I relate with existing. And that's a hard thing. And so I just, one of the persons who posted something, I want to read what she wrote. I want to ask you guys to just rap about it a little bit, because I don't think you meant anything harmful, but I could see where, you know, it's hard. You open your mouth and we don't have control about how it's going to be heard. And if you don't, it's being in dialogue. So anyway, so I want to read what Amber wrote. And then a couple of anonymous people are writing in things like, I'm not sure about how pain benefits my ancestors or my unborn children. You know, and I think we all nodded our heads because maybe we've been going through this training for a while. So we see it inside what Sam was saying when he was saying it. And so let's just really support the fact that this may be a really new way of talking about chronic pain with the kind of people who are present with us, right? So, and just sort of get relief. So Amber said, I find this question, and this is around Tara's question, and discourse around it so problematic. Identifying as chronically ill or disabled is not the problem. In fact, it gives us access to community around it and language that we need, and deconstructing shame and ableism. What is your motivation for getting people to not identify with it? It sounds like ableist language around malingering or borderline victim blaming, much of which we're already experiencing from our doctors when trying to access services. So if I go to a therapist who wants to focus on not identifying with the pain, right off the bat, I would be out the door. So there, and I think we've talked about this, so it makes sense what Amber's saying there. And so let's look at that a little bit together, and maybe some of the language around how we talk about this. Knowing it's tricky, and folks who are attending, like, you may not love what you hear. We're all humans. Someone else said, I had a terrible experience with one SE practitioner, but a great experience with Peter. And it's like, well, we're all individuals sort of learning our crafts, our skills, offering our hearts and our capabilities to the best we can. We're all kind of doing our own best bet. So come at that conversation around language as best as you can, folks. And I'll pop off screen for this one.
Sure. Yeah, I think that that's a really valid subject to talk about and to converse about, is because, you know, it can be really hard to hear that and to suggest or talk about that you are not your pain, and that it you know, and not to identify with it and stuff and everything. I am going to kind of put myself out here and just say, I think where we go with this is just inviting, maybe the better terminology is, you are more than just your pain or your identity of what your pain brings to your life and stuff. because of the way that we are biologically wired to focus in on the pain, and because of how much pain can inhibit our day-to-day life, in so many ways, like how much sleep we get, what happens when we eat, if we have IBS and those kind of things, there's just so many physiological things that happen in the midst of pain that it can be really traumatizing to be told not to identify with your pain, because it's such an integral part of your day-to-day life. And yes, we want to resource you, we want to connect you to places and people that can help that. And as a body worker, my first intent is to try to help to eliminate some of that pain, and to make it more easy and stuff to be in your world and in your body. And then what I like to tell clients all the time is, I might be the expert on muscles because that is my scope of practice and that's what I've studied, but I am certainly in no way, shape, or form the expert on your body, because you live in your body 24/7 and you know your body inside and out. And I would never presume to show up and tell you not to identify a certain way. I think the invitation is, as we sit with people in their pain, is to wonder and to be curious about what else is there when the pain is kind of put to the back burner a little bit, if we can invite that to happen. Because so often we get so wrapped up and so lost in the pain, we can lose sight of what else is available for us. So that's kind of my take on that.
A response. And I would also just say that this would bind, yes, okay, call it collapse, you are not your pain actually gets people's attention, because they say, oh, maybe I'm not my pain. It's like, it's one thing to be identified with a sensation, or identifying a sensation and being, not attached to the sensation, but just, that becomes overwhelming in your life. And so that's, you have no choice, or you think you have no choice. And I think that it's just that gradual recognition that there is a choice. There are ways we have of choosing it, but you would never necessarily jump right in there and say, you're not your pain. Although some people need to hear that, it's kind of so I think it's both ways. And as practitioners, we need to know when somebody is ready to hear it. It's like it can be a Zen slap on the back or slap on the face. For some people, it's like, oh, you're right. On the other hand, not everybody's ready to hear that. And there's a sensitivity involved in that. So I think that's where I would go with it.
Yeah, and I think it's inherently problematic. Just also, there is ableism. There's always ableism. There's always all the isms. Like, ableism lives in me, and it's not going to go away. I can be conscious of it, and I can correct when it comes out. I'm afraid of disability. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. With pain, with all of it. We're going to grow old and we're going to die, and it's going to hurt. And so I think I want to start with that like, I don't think, at least in my work, I just try and lead with, I'm going to make mistakes, things that I've been taught that I can't seem to get totally clear of are going to rear their ugly heads, and there may be some harm, and hopefully I can stick around for the repair, and we can build more intimacy and trust. And I can learn more from my client about what support looks like for them, because I'm going to miss sometimes. And that's what comes up with this question for me. It's like, that can be a great opportunity, because ideally I'm not coming in with like a one size fits all, cure all situation. Like, here's what we need to do. We need to change your identity. And it's like, okay, let's explore this together. What's at work here? What's working? What's not working? What's adaptive? What's maladaptive? What possibilities are there in the situation? Where's the coherence? How do we work with what's working the most? And how can we stretch and not tear? And just all the different things to look at, without making anything bad and wrong, or without making anything a personal failure. even words like maladaptive are, tricky. They have that kind of ring to them. So like, yeah, I think being curious together is really where it's at. And that's harder to do outside of the relationship. And here we are outside of the relationship talking about, made up general clients
Yeah,
that may have these certain,
right.
yeah, I think we were answering Tara's question. And even that was a context in like a client that's where there's resistance or we're not getting the results we want. Even that, it's like, one thing I learned from Peter Levine early on was like, if there's resistance, you're doing something wrong. Like, you gotta listen better, slow down, get more sensitive, ask for feedback. Oh, that's what came up for me. Just that we're always going to be working with that stuff. I think that's what we're all kind of waking up to these days. And there's a beautiful opportunity there because we build intimacy through conflict and through making mistakes and repairing them.
One of the beautiful things about SE is it's a very creative modality. And it's, you're right, it's all about listening and then responding to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hard to talk about this without it sounding like victim shaming. I mean,
Yeah.
But I think of it like, I can't think of the actual name of the prayer, but the one like they use in Alcoholics
Serenity prayer.
Anonymous, like, let me change
Serenity
as
prayer.
I can, and just
Yeah.
not leave accept the things that I can't change and the wisdom know the difference. So there's a lot of this with any kind of rehab therapy or whatever, you're totally intact with wherever you are, you always are. But there may be some things that could be changed to be more comfortable in the world.
Good stuff. Really good stuff. Each one of these questions could be an entire hour-long conversation, right? So this is a little bit, just everyone attending. This is the Institute's way of trying to create public service benefit. So I'm hoping this is benefiting you, giving you some context that you haven't had. We are a charitable nonprofit training institution who provides this 3-year training for therapeutic professionals, clinical professionals, massage therapists, physical therapists, acupuncturists, mindfulness coaches. Oh, wow, everyone here, who kind of is in the realm of doing one-on-one work with people. It's a program where in the beginning year, you explore how do we actually look at trauma, looking at it a little differently, understanding polyvagal things as it relates to how the somatic experiencing approach works. And then in the intermediate year, you look at lots of different types of trauma where it gets embedded in the body. Like you specifically look at car accident trauma or dog bite trauma or anesthesia trauma. I mean, it's wild and beautiful to unpack all these different kinds of traumas. And then in the advanced year, you look more at really advanced principles, including things like touch work and supporting the client and doing self-touch or things that might be not traditionally in the realm of what we would think of therapeutic practice, but really can expand our access to wellness and healing. And we do have a practitioner directory on the website at traumahealing.org. You can go look for practitioners in your area. We have them listed around the globe. Because they're listed there doesn't necessarily mean we've said that they're awesome with this. I mean, hey, like any therapy kind of support, any therapeutic work, sometimes you got to try a couple to find really your fit. Part of why we do these series is so you can begin to meet some of our people and be like, hey, I could follow up with any of these 4 afterwards. We will post this video on YouTube and their contact information will be in there. And you can follow up with anybody who's on here today if you'd like to try to do some work with them. Y'all are doing online work too, right? Even Beth Massage Therapy will still do, we could do some telehealth. This is really amazing creative time.
Oh yeah,
So,
resonance field is resonance field. So, there's a lot to be done and teaching people about self-touch and yeah.
Guys, I haven't done somatic experience work with Beth directly, but I've been in some trainings that she's been involved in. She's phenomenal. Not that everybody else is not. Everybody is, but you'll start to find that there's work to explore. So I just want to encourage you, go to our practitioner directory. Caroline's going to drop that in the chat so you can find it. And also I'd like to invite you to consider donating to the Institute. As a charitable nonprofit, we do, all the money we make from training supports us doing more training, supports the staff being able to book venues or run the technology, all the things behind the scenes. And we'd like to keep doing more free things for the public. We'd like to do these disaster relief projects. We'd like to do this kind of programming. I'm going to give you a link for it. We have a new link to share. It is traumahealing.org/INT give. So www.traumahealing.org/INT give. That is a special link that's designed for any folks who are also internationally present. If you would be willing to consider donating five euros, dollars, shekels, I don't know, whatever you got, a little something, it sends a signal to us that this was worthwhile to you. Or you can also go to traumahealing.org/donate if you're in the continental United States. So thank you. That's your little commercial announcement. I'll stop with all that stuff. Drives me nuts, but I'm happy to ask you guys to support what we think is really important and get you to get supported with some trainings. We do have another question that there's a couple popping up, and I'd love to bring Hannah Philliston. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. She says she's up for coming.
My question was, how do you deal with somebody with chronic fatigue? It is a chronic condition, but it's not pain. Yeah, besides the VU, yeah, I know all about this, but yeah, but I was thinking of maybe there's something else that would help.
Great question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
energy, brain fog, you know, the whole thing.
And yeah, it's what people really, I mean, I just had somebody in a class with this, and it's hard. It was really hard. And yet something shifted for this gentleman. I mean, he was just in a mindfulness based stress reduction class. And I think, talk about identifying with something. This is something people identify with. And the problem with it, it's like chronic pain, and that there's no, some people don't even think it's a real thing, right? It's like, it has a name, but I don't think it appears in a diagnostic book. But it's what this kind of generalized thing. And somebody just disappeared. I mean, I think in this case, and I think I've dealt with one other person who's had this syndrome. It's recognizing that first what you're feeling is real, right? So you can't deny that, right? And trying to find, in this case, ways of bringing an energy into the body that seems to be missing, and seeing what may be blocking that energy from coming in. Because it's not like he wasn't, right? Because we fall into these vicious cycles. It's like, I can't get up, so I don't get up, or I won't get up. And it just gets to be a habit, and we can't break the habit. And so it's finding a way in to that at least allows some shift to happen. And then once one shift happens, there's a recognition that, oh, another shift can happen. And it, I think it can build from there. But that's all I could say. I'm sure others have many other things to say too, but that's a tough one.
The reason I got interested in somatic experiencing and took the training was because I had a collapse and was in bed for 9 months with chronic fatigue syndrome. And had a 6-month-old baby and a 3.5-year-old and a postpartum wife and money that needed to be made, and I couldn't get out of bed, and I thought my life was over, and it was terrifying. And I did everything I could do, and I have a lot of resources, and I was very motivated, and my legs would shake, and I would have to sit down just wherever I was. I was very sick, and it was episodic. I would get a little better, and I would relapse, which itself was really stressful. It was disheartening. And really, I did all the things, all the research, all the blood work, all the supplements, and nothing really helped until I tried SE, and then that's what helped. And I recovered. And it really took, I was back on my feet after just a couple months of SE, somatic experiencing therapy. And then it was still another year or two to really get completely clear of it and realize like, okay, that's over. You know, that I built my own house now. I mean, it's like I don't have fatigue anymore. I haven't for a lot of years, but the bracing was so strong, and the fear of the relapse was so strong. And the way I understand it is, and now we get into a bunch of neuroscience. There's not time to do it, but basically, it was a state of very, very high activation of chronic stress and activation, where the gas pedal was all the way down to the floor, but also the brake pedal was all the way down to the floor. So it was a freeze state, of just total collapse, kind of like a catatonic. It was like the kill switch got thrown on my energy system. And in order to come out of that, we have to go back down into the range of activity our nervous system can handle, which is where the fight and flight is happening. You know, because you get worked up and then you cross that line and you go numb. And then that's what helps. And there's a lot to know there, but it's hard to come back down without help, because you come right back into the storm and there's a lot to feel. And, you know, I had an accumulation of trauma that I had just been muscling through for my entire adult life. And then it finally just caught up with me and knocked me flat. And I needed a lot of help, but it worked. And then since then, I've got skills to keep that from happening again. Like learning, just learning to identify dissociation, learning to identify overwhelm, recognizing that even though you're so exhausted you can't get out of bed in the morning, being so depressed that there's just like, what's the use? Why bother? All of that. It's hard to recognize that that's a highly activated state with an enormous amount of energy that's taking just a little more than that energy to contain and hold down. But that's really what's there. That's in my experience. It's like underneath that exhaustion, there's usually rage and then grief and just a lot of big feelings. And there's a belief between the person and the feelings that it's too much and they can't handle it. And we got to bring in support for something new to happen.
Sam, I'm just really appreciating you as a practitioner sharing your story and sharing how that impacted you. And Hannah, I would just say, you know, it shows up so differently for everybody. I've worked both with people that have had specific chronic fatigue and then people that have had other autoimmune where chronic fatigue is a part of that. You know, so for me, I think it's about what I typically say to clients is it's usually 2 or 3 different types of therapies together that you kind of find your sweet zone, because on a physical level, you know, you need to try to do things like massage helps to lower your cortisol levels, which are your stress hormones and stuff and everything, and to release more endorphins, which is going to help, you know, your energy levels and everything, as well as, you know, when you do myofascial release, which is another modality that I work in, that's going to help all of the structural tissues in the body not be so constricted and so tamped down. And so that's going to allow more freedom of flow, perhaps some craniosacral work or some energy work then to bring in and to really access those energy levels so that they can be working at higher optimal functioning levels and stuff and everything. And then, like, you know, Sam said, having for him the somatic experiencing was the key that kind of unlocked the rest for him and stuff. So, you know, it's so hard and it can be so frustrating because when you have dealt with this, you know, as long as you've dealt with it, whether it's been 3 months, whether it's been 3 years, whether it's been 30 years, you know, you try thing after thing after thing. It's like, is this going to be the modality? Is this going to be the answer or the key to unlock it and stuff? And I just think it's trying to hold space for you to continue to hope and continue to seek and continue to find those therapies that really speak to your system. Because even though chronic fatigue or whatever autoimmune or whatever we're talking about has very generalized kind of things and symptoms and stuff, how it affects you, Hannah, is going to be different than how chronic fatigue affected Sam, or how it might affect me and stuff. So it's, you know, really finding that practitioner that can hold that space for you and that can help you explore what's going to be in your body's best interest, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. So that's kind of my take on that.
Well, I just thank you, Beth, but I just want to say that I live in Egypt. We don't have any qualified cranial sacral therapist, massage therapists here. We don't have any of this. So, you know, I'm trying to do this work on my own.
Yeah. So I'm going to encourage you to check out the practitioner list for the Somatic Experience Institute, because so many of them work virtually. And like I said, Hannah, what people can do, like Jon and I with craniosacral and mindfulness and stuff and everything, it's almost like we would be there in the room with you doing what your body needs. That's that resonance field that I was talking about, that energy and energy work knows no limitations on how close you have to be or how far away you can be. It is, it's transferred through time and space and beautiful, beautiful ways. So don't give up and you're going to find your place. I feel it. Yeah.
Thank you, Beth.
Yeah.
Sam, I want to tell you that, sorry, I want to tell you that when I asked myself, is it okay to heal this chronic fatigue? I got some terror inside. So I think my layer is terror. It's like it's been keeping me invisible since I was a little kid, because this was the part that was hiding me or something, trying to keep me safe from the environment I was living in.
And it worked. Here you are.
Exactly. But it started getting worse because I passed through other kinds of traumas, medical traumas and things like this, and then the COVID, and I don't know, and the vaccine, and it was too stressful on the body. So, you know, I reached an extent where, you know, I'm just finished. But I think it is my terror. Probably there is rage underneath, but yes, I totally agree. Thank you, guys.
I've just blessings on finding the support that you need. I hope you don't have to keep doing this alone.
Thank you.
Maybe even right now, Hannah, like I really heard you say something I think that's there for probably everyone, which is like I've been trying it all and it's been compounding. Like I don't want to step over that you just said that, because the world is right there. There's probably, like I can see in the, we're feeling the upset. We start to talk about the upset and we feel it and all comes right present. And so I just want to invite you to kind of like, go ahead and really like let your eyes look around this screen right now. And like my panelists, like, let's be with Hannah. Like, let's just be with her. Like, and just like, you know, we don't know, like, these aren't answers. We don't know answers. We're in conversation, right? But we're in it together and there's something so essential. And there you are in Egypt. It's late at night. I like, what a beautiful thing that you've you're time traveling and space traveling right now. And like, I want to be looking at, like, I'm looking at my camera right now, like everybody out there, like really that seeing each other, the way babies need to see another face is signaling safety in the polyvagal. And so I want to just
feel
name that.
safe already. Yes.
Yeah. And then also, Nimi, you had some instincts. So we have a lot of people on the call today who are not trained in somatic experiencing. And so we might be saying words that you're like, what are they saying?
No, I know all about Peter Levine's
I got
work.
you know it. I got you knew it. Yeah.
I just couldn't afford the training, and I couldn't afford and I couldn't be in the States to attend the training. But I've been following Peter Levine and attending all his, the other courses.
Everything you can.
So
well, keep writing us, keep staying in touch. We are building scholarship programs. That's part of what the donations are for folks. If you go to donate. There is a box to donate specifically for scholarships, exactly for Hannah, like for people
Oh,
who are
thank
around the world. Like
you.
that's it. But sweets, the other thing I want to say is that like the beauty of somatic work, someone was like, are you suggesting all pain is somatic? And I realize a lot of people think somatic means like not real. And I think
Oh,
we know, and it's not, that's not what we're saying. That's not what we're saying. In this space, we're like, no, it's incredibly real. It's the connection between the mind and the body and all of the processors in between. But you said something really wise. You said, there's this terror. And then I think terror is really right there next to the anger and the fury. Like you took really extreme emotions, right? But prior to emotions is this like survival energy. And that's something in somatic experiencing we're really training, that survival energy, that literally like, am I freezing and dropping out like Sam described? Or am I fighting? Or am I fleeing? Like we just really like that's underneath a lot of emotional. And so I just wanted to name that you had an inherent wisdom, like really deep. Okay. Like really. And I think everybody probably drawn to this call, even just to be in this conversation, has something of that. So I just want to empower us with that access and naming it. And like, we're just trying to figure out more ways what to do with that thing we already know. Like that's all we're doing. And so just thank you for being with us. We're getting close to time. So I'm going to wrap this up and we'll have you go back to the attendee side for now, but you don't go back to anywhere. No one who's here is going back to anywhere. Like we're in this conversation together. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you so much.
Yeah. So folks, we're at time. We're supposed to end right now, but we still have like 60% of our people on the line. And I find this every time. Once y'all start talking, people are like, this is interesting. I want to argue about that point. Like there's a lot of that. And that's good. That's what it means to be human. I would say we're wrestling with any of this, right? For ourselves, for each other, for our own trajectory. A lot of people are asking about your own chronic pain experience. I don't think you are obligated to share anything, but Sam, really honor like what you offered us. So if people are asking about things like that, would you be willing to stay on for like another 15 minutes just to kind of keep seeing what's arising in this space? Okay.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know. You're hooked. This is great stuff. So I'm putting that question has been responded to. And then there's another question in there, kind of because 15 minutes will move fast. It's from Katie. And Katie, I'm going to kind of put it out there for you so that maybe we can do an exercise and not just a response on it. She said, I believe letting go of pain means opening to ease and comfort. And often that doesn't feel safe in the nervous system as much as no pain is wanted. So can you share strategies you use in your work to like increase that window of tolerance? So some of us know, you can Google window of tolerance and you'll see Dan Siegel's diagram. It's like increase what we can experience. Do you guys have maybe a little experience you could guide us through? Maybe there's some touch, something we could do somatically, something we could literally do in our physiology to kind of open to ease a little bit, just all of us right now together. And if folks want to do this, raise your hand while the practitioners are deciding if they want to do it.
I mean, wouldn't that, to me, that would, one thing that would be really, really helpful in that is pendulation, because you're finding these places in the body which are activated and in pain, and then finding a place in the body that's not, and then just kind of going back and forth and letting the wisdom of the body find its own.
What if, John, could you lead us in a little bit of that?
I can try. Or why not?
I mean, pendulation in light of somatic experiences is a huge,
of course,
deep principle, right?
Yeah.
Dave Berger will be like, this is not something you do in 2 seconds.
John, can I preface what you're about to do?
Yeah, or you can do it.
No, I'd rather you did it, but there's one piece I want to put in, which maybe you were going to do anyway, but for me, I really like how consent fits into this, like with our own bodies. I think that's crucial. Like we're so used to yanking ourselves around or throwing our vulnerable parts in at the deep end, or kind of slave driving ourselves and overriding. We're taught to override from a young age, and in order to do this kind of work, and I think as a direct response to this question, we really have to move at the speed of safety, which is really the speed of like the slowest, most vulnerable parts of ourselves. Like, like if I walk too fast and my kids can't keep up, like I'm doing that to myself all the time. That we've taught to do that to ourselves. That's how we succeed in the world, at least by economically. So like really being sensitive to consent and kind of probing for consent, like even with just doing an exercise, like, okay, I'm going to try and like go into my heart. Maybe your heart's like, I don't know. Sometimes you say mean things to me. And then we slow down. It's like, okay, what do you need to be ready? Just kind of having that inner relatedness and sensitivity and gentleness and waiting for the green light. Like, okay, it went from red to yellow, but it's not green. I'm just going to be here and I'm going to be here waiting. Like if we can be kind to ourselves in that way, I think that's how the window can expand. And that's how we can stretch without tearing. And that's how we can then integrate the new places we go. So I just wanted to create that context.
And I mean, it's so interesting what you said.
I'm going to jump in, guys. I'm asking people to raise their hands to come over, and then everyone is raising their hands, and then they're declining to come over when we send you the prompt. Guys, if you raise your hand, if you want to come over, accept that prompt. And we'll only have a couple of minutes for this. So to everything Sam just said, this will be a different pace.
And just, Sam, and something we didn't really even talk about too much. I mean, it may have been obvious to some, but most people have no relationship with their body at all. I mean, especially, this is when they come to a mindfulness class, when they come to SE work, a lot of the first part of the work is simply getting to know your body in a particular way. And it's like, oh, I don't know, but so, and Alexandra, who already has her hand on her heart, it's really wonderful that in itself is like an act of permission, to sort of, can this be done? But just that, and also, just grounding yourself in your breath, but also orienting yourself to where you are and just looking around and recognizing that this is always here, right? And that we can always come back to what's external and also come back to what's internal. And, we have options all along the way. And so just feeling that sense of the breath, feeling that sense of contact with the chair, with the floor, with the air. And, if you're dealing right now with any sort of pain anywhere in the body, just kind of touch into that. Just kind of really recognize what's there at this moment. And if it's comfortable, certainly you can place your hand there or imagine your hand there. And then we can also, if it feels right, find a place in the body which is just regulated, which is stable, which is in no pain whatsoever. That could be the bottom of your feet. It could just be your big toe. Right? And just notice that we can actually direct awareness to one place or the other. And so we may touch into the pain and then redirect to this other place in the body, quite a bit farther from the pain, or maybe right next to the pain. And then we come back and touch into the pain just a bit, and then come back to the other place. And this is pendulation. This is just pendulating back and forth between that which is activated, say the pain, and that which is more regulated. And knowing at any time you can even go externally, just open the eyes. And so eventually, if we continue to do this, maybe, this kind of limitation of that which we're feeling in the pain can actually expand, and there can be more spaciousness around it, which is, we've discussed earlier, allows it to kind of release into the whole body. And it's not as one pointed pain as it was, but it's much more diffuse, and eventually maybe is much less, maybe. But knowing the whole time that we have other options, so we can redirect the attention. We can hold it with a certain amount of care. Yeah, and I just noticed Matilda, like this space above the body, outside of the body, or the subtle body, you know, which is also not experiencing that. Yeah. So we can just gently go back and forth, and then eventually we can be with that which is not what we're used to.
That's something I'm noticing while we're doing that is that sorry, that's me. I noticed that, I just was not feeling into my lower back as the pain spot. And then I was feeling into my thighs as the strong spot. And as I was going back and forth, the lower back pain didn't become less, but I felt sort of my face and my shoulders widen a little bit, like just literally like a bigger, like, oh, there was just like more space in me to be with, like it wasn't going anywhere, but there's more space to be.
Yeah.
You guys feel anything like that? But or whatever, feel free to share whatever you share. That's kind of where we'll slowly wrap up here.
I had a lot of tingling and noticing hot and cold, and a lot of twitching in other areas. Like my whole body was talking.
Yeah, wow. And it always does. We just don't pay attention to it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And I like the vibration of moving out and coming in and moving. I never had that experience. So that was really very powerful, internally felt, rather than just watching it on the screen, but actually doing the practice. Thank you.
May I speak? Can you hear me?
Absolutely, Meredith.
Hi, I'm Meredith. So Karen, when I connected to your name and I just moved into who you were, like, as Karen, I felt embodied. It was like the first time today that I like moved into my body. And I don't know who it was. I think it was Karen, but I'm not sure, who spoke about their experience. I saw Matilda like putting her hand up here. It gave me a sense of what I've been experiencing for a very long time, because I teach Kundalini, and I've had more out-of-body experiences than inner. And it's not because of Kundalini, it's just my experience with the practice. And I never thought to feel into the spaces, because I don't think we talk enough about spiritual pain, and which is the energy field that we live in. It's etheric and it's real, it's in nature, it's just who we are. And that's most of my experience is through spiritual pain. That's what's really been coming up for me. And I think that what you were saying is helping me connect to where I need to go in my own meditation practice to align to some of the messages I'm getting, or, even the pain body on a subtle level. So yeah, it gave me a lot today. Thank you for this. Yeah, thank you guys. You're champions.
Guys are champions. Look at y'all. Jeez.
All champions.
But we are kind of at time, guys. And so there is so much here. And Karen, you said it well. Meredith, you reflected it more too. This, like, it's really the experience of this stuff It's like you can talk about it and you're in your cognition and be like, yeah, but no, huh, and all kinds of contortions happen. And, it's like the cognitive pain, our thinking pain, I don't mean that too lightly, but hey, so getting these experiences, working with practitioners, becoming practitioners, studying more for yourself. I just would encourage everyone who's been with us today. I want to thank you guys for volunteering to be with us as Dion moves you back to the attendee side. Just really acknowledge your bravery, acknowledge everybody who's been with us today. Like what a cool pleasure to be with you. Like I just keep thinking about that initial list, how everyone was all around the world. I mean, I was mind-boggling how we're all together in this, and we're just working on being human. So acknowledging everyone who attended for being here, the courage it took, the questions you shared. We answered most, but not all. So please stay in touch with us, stay in dialogue. Really want to acknowledge the four of you. Wow. Like, I'm not seeing conversations like this anywhere. And you all were such an incredible intersection of your love, your compassion, your commitment, and your professionalism. So thank you. Guys, I always have to drag these SEPs out here and be like, come on, just let people hear you. And they're like, but it's not what I do. So these are not like professional talking heads. These are professionals in the field they represent who are just offering this as an offering for you. So if you are also a somatic experiencing practitioner or speaker or student who might like to be on one of those, I'll have Caroline drop in the chat the link to the Speakers Bureau where you can let us know a little bit about what you're up to, or email us at publichealth@traumahealing.org so we can know you. But just to really acknowledge the four of you for all it took, all you offered, and all you continue to offer in your work. Acknowledge the Institute and the universe, and especially everybody who is suffering and struggling with how to relate to, resolve, work through, live with the chronic pain they're experiencing. I think we all in this work have compassion for what that might be. And as we close up, would anybody, just probably one of the four of us, give us like a word, or maybe a couple of you if you need to, whatever you need to do to be complete, a word or two to close up today. Yeah.
I just want to really thank everybody for joining us today, for allowing Jon, Sam, and Rachel and I to, just converse in front of you and talk about what it is that we do and what we're passionate about. And what we're really passionate about is you and how we can show up and support you in your journey. Community is so essential. And Ami, thank you for what you do with the Institute and in the SE world and stuff, and what you're down there doing right now, and disaster relief and stuff. Like it's amazing. And it's because we can come together in community like this that we can find support and we can find a landing place. And just to encourage people that are at their wits' end and they're losing hope, and that, we are a community, and to just reach out and we'll be here for you. At least I will be.
Anybody else? We'd be here for the world, their inquiry. Yeah. Thank you, Beth. Speaks well for all. Yeah. Okay, folks, we will see you in January, second Friday of the month, noon US Mountain Time. You will find out about this posted on Facebook. You can get on our mailing list and we'll tell you about it, but you can always count on it the second Friday of every month. In January, we'll be talking a little bit about motivation, but more from the place of the nervous system. Not like, hey, rah, rah, happy, positive affirmations. Like, how do you, what is it about motivating the nervous system? And what's the role of the nervous system in motivation? So if you are a practitioner who works in that field, we'd love to actually talk with you and see if you want to jump in this with us. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
and just a little boogie on out. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Your gifts.
Take care.
Love.